Hello Kombucha brewers, my name is Derek from Brew Your Bucha, and today we're going to do a tutorial on how to do a 4-liter brew using our special kits here. Now I'll start with saying that here at Brew Your Bucha we have 3 different types of kits, the most standard one being the 4-liter kit, but we also have the Deluxe and the Supreme, which have a few more accessories that you might need that might help you out. With the Deluxe, you get a few extra bottles, so it comes with 4 of these second fermentation bottles, very useful. And with the Supreme, you get additional ingredients to do 4 more brews, so that's 6 brews total. And you get a siphon that helps with bottling. For more information, you check out our shop and you'll see all the different tools that you can use. But today we're just going to start with your simple 4-liter brew, and all of these kits will have everything you need to get that done. And with the 4-liter brew, it comes with a 4-liter jar, and this is a brewing vessel used to hold your kombucha. You have your organic cane sugar. So this is essential for feeding the SCOBY, and essential to make a brew. I know there's a lot of sugar, this is 250 grams, but through the fermentation process, the SCOBY consumes most of it, so you're left with very little in your final product. Here we have our infamous black tea. This is a special Brew Your Bucha blend and has a great light flavor for brewing kombucha. It's great. And here is the SCOBY. This little alien-looking puck is the most essential thing to brewing kombucha. It's called a SCOBY because it's a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast, meaning that it's a living organism and it needs food, which is your sweet tea that I'm going to show you how to make. But in this process, the SCOBY consumes the sugars and teas and ferments it and gives off alcohol and essential acids. And it gives you that flavor that you're used to with kombucha. So this little guy is very important. Other accessories that come with the kit are a strainer, usually for the second fermentation to get all the little bits out. We have a temperature strip, which is going to be very useful in monitoring the temperature of your brew. We have a cloth cover, which you need to cover the top of the jar in the later stages of the process. And here we have a Pipet Straw, which is used to get a little bit of samples when you're testing your brew. And from there, that's all the essential ingredients, tools, and so let's begin brewing. Step 1, boil 2 liters of cold filtered water. You want to make sure that you use filtered water because tap water can still have a bit of chlorine in it, and even though the boiler is going to burn most of it off, a little bit still remains if you don't leave it for over 10 to 15 minutes. So to avoid that problem, let's boil filtered water. So the next step is to place your organic black tea. We use tea from the Yunnan region. It's called Yunnan Gold, and we're going to place this tea in the tea filter. This is going to prevent the leaves from getting into your brew and messing it up a bit. So let's go ahead and put that in there. So you see the filter has a bit of an opening. It's kind of narrow, so you gotta make a little bit of space first. There we go. So you just want to shake it down to the bottom, make a little bit of space at the top. We're just going to fold it over a little bit just to make sure it doesn't get out of the top. There you go. All right, it looks like our water is about to boil, so we're just about ready to move to step 3. So now that the water's boiled, we're going to place the hot water in our brewing vessel. So you want to pour 2 liters. In our experience, we know that is just about half. So you can use a measuring cup, or you can estimate just about halfway through the brewing vessel. There we go. So we've poured our 2 liters of boiling hot water into our brewing vessel, and you can see it's just about halfway up the vessel. It's perfect. And now we're going to drop our organic black tea into the hot water. Now you want to make sure it's fully into the hot water so it gets a good steep. And you can drop it and let it sit for about 10 minutes. Here we are 10 minutes later, and our tea is now fully steeped. You can see that the color of it is a nice golden amber brown. Smells great. And what we're going to do is we're just going to pull the steeped tea out from the brew and place it in a bowl. The next step is to put in the sugar. So we have our organic cane sugar, 250 grams, and we got to do it while it's hot so that it melts the sugar and we get a nice sweet tea. Now it looks like a lot of sugar, and you're probably thinking you don't want to put that much into your body, but you have to remember that in the kombucha brewing process, the SCOBY is going to consume almost all of that sugar. So really it's just food for your SCOBY, so keep that in mind. Next we're going to stir the brew, make sure we get all of the sugar dissolved. We're using a metal spoon right now. If you have a wooden spoon, that works great as well. But a regular spoon will work just to get it stirred up. So you're really going to have to work at it. The sugar is going to take some time to dissolve, but you just keep spinning it and eventually it'll fully dissolve. Alright, there we go. You can see that the sugar particles at the bottom are slowly dissipating and we're left with a nice clean liquid. Alright, there we go. We got some sweet tea. Beautiful. Alright, and we've got our 2 liters of cold filtered water. You'll notice I got it over there from the fridge, and nice and cold and perfectly filtered. So we're going to use this to cool off our sweet tea. We're going to pour it just about to the top. It's going to be about 3.5 liters or so. And this will effectively cool down our tea so we can start brewing. There we go. So with our kits, you're going to want to pour the cold water just to about where the jar starts to fold inwards. This is a good indication of where you should probably stop because you want to leave enough room for the SCOBY and the starter fluid, so this is great. Now we're going to put our temperature strip on our brewing vessel. The reason that this is useful is because you want to know the temperature of the brew. And sometimes the temperature outside of the room and the liquid itself is different. So this handy little guy can tell you exactly what the temperature is of the liquid. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on. And the way that we recommend doing it is you want to put it on the back of the vessel and you want to put it on the top half horizontally. And I'm just going to put it right here in the back. Now, it's very important to note that this temperature strip only reads a certain band of temperature. So you can see it here it goes from 4 degrees Celsius or 39 Fahrenheit all the way up to 36 degrees Celsius or 97 Fahrenheit. So right now the liquid is probably a bit too warm to be within this band. So we may have to wait about 15-20 minutes. And you'll notice that the color will indicate what temperature it is. So it'll start at the top, and over time, the hope is that the color will draw down to our preferred temperature, which is 23 degrees Celsius or 72 degrees Fahrenheit. Now that our kombucha has cooled down to about 23 degrees or 72 Fahrenheit, we're now ready to put in our SCOBY. It's a good temperature, it's not going to burn it. So we'll grab our pack. Now you can see here the SCOBY is the disc-shaped little alien-looking object. It's the colony of bacteria and yeast, and you can see little bits of yeast strands all around it and beside it. That's a good thing. You want to have a bit of yeast in there. That helps the fermentation. And we have about a cup of starter fluid in here. So this is the fluid. You're going to open it. It smells quite vinegary. And you want it to be very acidic. This is going to neutralize the sweet tea. So I'll open it. There you go. You're just going to want to pour it in slowly. Make sure you don't make too much of a mess, but it'll just slide right in. Beautiful. So you'll want to take note of where the SCOBY is floating. Right now, our SCOBY is floating at the top, but that's perfectly normal, and it's perfectly normal if the SCOBY does start to sink. If you notice it floating in the middle, or even floating just at the bottom, that's perfectly normal too. So don't worry about where your SCOBY floats. It's healthy and gonna work perfectly fine in any situation. So whether your SCOBY is up front or down here, it's ready to go. Now your brew is ready to be covered and stored away for the next 7 days or so. We have with us our Brew Your Bucha cloth. So how this works is we're just going to put it right on top, and the reason that we do this is to stop any dust or dirt particles or even insects from getting into the kombucha itself. This is pretty important because you don't want to get any harmful bacteria in there. It can make your brew go sour and possibly get mold. So cover it up with this cloth, secure it with this elastic band, and you'll notice you have a nice tight cover over the top of your brew, but still has airflow, which you need for the kombucha to brew properly. So you don't want to cover this with the lid. The lids here is available to use for storage, but not when you're brewing your kombucha. You want to use the cloth. And the next step is just to put it away for the next 7 days. So we like to choose a place that is typically warm and dry and away from direct sunlight. Sunlight can potentially harm the bacteria in your kombucha. There's UV rays that can potentially damage that, and you want to keep all the probiotics and good bacteria in your brew. So we protect it by keeping it in a nice, cool, dark place, away from too much activity. You don't want it to be shaken around too much. So we're going to go ahead and place this one above the fridge because we have some space there, and it's a perfect spot for your kombucha to sit. There we go. We have a nice little spot for our kombucha brew to sit and get fermenting. So for the next 6 to 7 days, your SCOBY is going to be working away at your kombucha. So its job is to consume the sugars and the tea to essentially ferment it and give off essential acids and a small amount of alcohol. So that's the byproduct of the SCOBY and the sugar. So we typically like to taste it after about 6 days. We have a nice little testing straw here. So you'll want to use this. You can stick it into the brew, cover the top, and draw just a little bit out and give it a taste. The ideal taste at about 6 or 7 days is a little bit sour, but still sweet. You want to keep a tiny bit of sugar in there so that you can use it to help get some carbonation, because that's quite essential. But for now, we're going to leave it for 7 days and check back again when it's ready. Now we're ready to taste the kombucha. It's been sitting in the above the fridge for 7 days now. It should be fully fermented, but it's always good to give it a taste. Depending on the situation of your home, it could be a little colder, a little bit warmer. The fermentation periods are a little bit different based on the temperature of your home. So in our case, it's about 23 degrees usually, so that equates to about 7-day fermentation period. But there's always room for adjustment. We're going to taste ours now and see where we're at. All right, cheers. That's good. This is exactly where you want it to be. My kombucha, in this case, is a little bit sour, a little bit sweet, but definitely fermented. And if your kombucha after 7 days is a bit too sweet, a bit too sugary, then you're going to want to leave it in the cupboard for another extra couple days. So I would put it back in for another 2 days and taste it again. If it's too vinegary, you're still going to want to pull out the kombucha, but you know, obviously you can't add the sugar in immediately. You're going to want to do a few things in the second fermentation period that will kind of negate the sourness if that's a little bit too much for your liking. But ours is perfect, so we're ready to bottle it and move on to the next step. Now that we're ready to move on to the next step, we have to remove the SCOBY from the kombucha. You're going to want to do this with clean hands, so I've already washed my hands in the sink. And pull out your SCOBY. So I've got a bowl over here ready for it. I'm just going to grab this little guy. There he is. And you're going to want to keep about 1 cup of kombucha for the next batch. So we generally pour off right from here. And if you're not going to brew for another few weeks, then you're going to want to keep the SCOBY in the liquid, and that will keep it good for up to a month or so, just like that. So I'm going to pour a cup out. Now we've got our SCOBY removed from the glass jar, and what we're left with is our raw kombucha. So we have, you know, roughly a little bit less than 4 liters of raw kombucha, and what you do with this is you go to the next step, which is the second fermentation. This is the part where we add different flavors, typically fruits, juices, herbs, spices, whatever you can think of. People have created many different recipes that are just completely out of this world. So at this point, you can head over to our recipes page, take a look at some of the recipes we have, but you can use your creativity here. Use any fruits that you can get your hands on. And what we like to do is use our 1 liter amber bottles, so it's these guys here. They're perfect for brewing kombucha because they have an airtight seal, and so these will help to help build the carbonation within the bottle. So how that's going to work is while your kombucha is you know, away from its SCOBY, inside the bottle it's going to continue fermenting. So it'll start eating the sugars and turn the sugars into carbonation. And you want to let that build. That's how you get that fizzy, delicious carbonation that everyone wants. So use the proper bottles. Don't use ones that have don't have a proper seal. And yeah, you want to let the second fermentation go for a couple of days. So we won't explain that here, but we do have a bottle ready to go from last week, and you can see how that looks. So we used one of our swing top amber bottles, so this is just as good. It has a swing top that keeps the carbonation in. And we did a batch of green tea, and this one's delicious, so let me show you what this looks like. There we go. So you'll notice that the green tea is a little bit lighter in color, has that very jasmine-y floral flavor, and this one we did is just raw. You can add flavors to it, but personally I like it just like this. It's delicious. Yeah, that's amazing. Very floral. We use a very hand-selected green tea from China. It's a Jasmine Superior, and it makes for a perfect brew. That concludes our tutorial for the 4-liter kombucha brew. It's been a pleasure showing you how to use our products, how to use our SCOBY, and we got to make a nice jar of kombucha here. So for more information, want to see more photos, videos, we've got it all on our website. Visit us at www.brewyourbucha.com. And thanks again. Cheers.